I had just moved into a new home in an area that I was unfamiliar with. I mean, I knew about it beforehand and had visited a few times before making the move, but I didn't really know it. From what I saw on the days I walked around and came by to check out the houses, it seemed very quiet. Not a lot of people out and about, and everyone sort of keeping to themselves. Even on move-in day, when I had the whole moving truck outside and was in and out of the house constantly, nobody came out or introduced themselves or anything. I didn't mind, I was usually the quiet neighbor anyway, but I just noticed it seemed everyone else here was the same way. Made it hard to truly tell what kind of people lived around me. This started on the second day after the move. I still hadn't started my new job yet, and was still working on getting the house organized and unpacked. I spent basically all day inside, partly because it was snowing outside, but mostly because I was stressed with all the boxes around and wanted to get it done as fast as possible. I went to bed early, around 8 or so. When I woke up, I very quickly realized it wasn't morning. I rolled over and saw it was 2 a.m., and just when I was going to question why I woke up, I heard this strange scraping sound. It was muffled and followed by an airy thump sound. Then, a few seconds later, there was a scrape, and then another thump, over and over. Eventually, I got up from bed, still having no idea what I was hearing. I walked over to the window and looked down toward the front yard of my house. There was a man in my driveway, shoveling the snow. He moved back and forth, scraping up a line of snow and tossing it off the driveway. He was covered fully in dark winter clothing, so I couldn't tell much about him. I probably stood there in the window watching him for 2 or 3 minutes. To be honest, it kind of creeped me out. I know I just moved there, and maybe this guy was trying to do a nice gesture for me, but at 2 a.m., and without ever even talking to me. After those few minutes, I left the window and went downstairs, putting my shoes and a jacket on, and opening the front door to introduce myself and just figure out what was going on. But when I stepped outside, he wasn't there. He had just left all of a sudden, coincidentally as soon as I left the window. And it's not even like he finished shoveling. Half of the driveway was still covered, and it looked like the man had stopped midway through shoveling a section. I stood out there and looked all around, but every house was dark, and the entire neighborhood seemed to be quiet and asleep. Noticeably, no other driveway was shoveled either. After a minute, I went back inside, got in bed, and slept until morning. I spent the whole next day inside unpacking again, half expecting that guy to show up at my door to introduce himself, but he never did. It snowed on and off that day too, covering the whole neighborhood with another blanket of snow, and honestly, I thought I would never really get an answer as to what that guy was doing. I stayed up later, now with my TV set up, but still exhausted, I went to bed around 11. And again, I woke up a little past 2 a.m. That same muffled scraping sound filled the silence. I got up and hurried to the window. It was the same man, slowly shoveling my driveway. This night, I wasted no time hurrying downstairs, getting dressed, and walking out the front door. But it was like the man knew somehow, because, again, he was gone. No signs of him anywhere. The longer I stayed outside in the cold, the more this eerie feeling crept into me. I waited 15 more minutes in case he came back, but went to bed afterward. This went on for several more days. I'd wake up in the middle of the night to that same sound, check the window and see him out there slowly, almost creepily, shoveling. I had stopped trying to go outside though, and would just try to go back to sleep instead. I didn't know what to do about it. Maybe he had some weird connection to this house, or the previous owners, or didn't even know I moved in. And despite having a really bad feeling and being creeped out, it's not like I could really call the cops about it. What would I say? Some man shows up and shovels my driveway for me every night for free. It sounds like a joke. I swear though, something about the way the man moved, and would constantly disappear when I went out there, was disturbing. I knew that something wasn't right. I think it was on the 6th day that I woke up again in the middle of the night to the same shoveling sounds outside. And despite knowing who it was and what I'd see, I still got up from the bed and walked over to the window. But just before I reached the window, the sound abruptly stopped. and when I looked out, he wasn't there. I was absolutely sure that he couldn't have run away that quickly. There was less than a second between me hearing the sound stop and me reaching the window. I knew that he was still out there, though the driveway was fully shoveled. And even after a couple of minutes, I didn't hear anything else. It was like he knew that I was at the window. Tired and frustrated, I ran downstairs, threw on my coat and boots, and swung open the front door to go look around. I almost fell backwards. The man was standing on my porch, just a foot away from the door. He was tall, holding the shovel to his side. The man had a thick, scraggly beard and shoulder-length, wet black hair, and his eyes stared at me intensely. He looked extremely sleep-deprived and sickly. I couldn't even move or speak a word for a couple of seconds, still absolutely horrified. And this absolute horror I was in only seemed to get worse when I realized he wasn't moving or speaking either. He just stood there on my porch, staring at me from a foot away. I finally controlled myself and managed to ask what he was doing. His eyes tensed even more, like they were heavier, staring into me. Then he turned and walked off the porch. I stayed in the doorway, watching him walk down to the driveway, then to the road, and seemingly continue down the road for as far as I could see. I was scared and confused and still in shock. I closed the door. This time, I really thought about calling the cops, but I knew that I'd get nothing from it. The man was already gone. I still didn't know who he was, and at the end of the day, he really hadn't done anything yet. So I'd be calling just on the feeling that this was something bad, and that something would happen, which I knew the cops wouldn't take seriously. So, again, I went back upstairs and went to bed. The next day, it didn't snow at all, and with the house all set up, I was able to relax for most of the day. I still felt uneasy about everything, and not having anyone to talk to about it and being in an area that I wasn't familiar with just made it even worse. Eventually, the sun went down and I went to bed. That night, I woke up at 2 a.m., just like all the other nights, except there weren't any sounds. My body seemed to have just been used to waking up at that time, anticipating the man shoveling outside. I laid there awake for a few minutes, listening to how eerily quiet it was. I closed my eyes and tried to fall back asleep, and that's when I heard something below me. A very quiet thump. It was so quiet, I was surprised I even heard it. And it wasn't concerning on its own. It sounded like nothing more than the house settling. But with everything else going on, and it being 2 a.m., just like all the previous nights, I felt like I had to be sure. I listened for another minute, not hearing anything more, but knew I couldn't sleep without checking. I got up and walked downstairs. My eyes were dead focused on the front door as I walked down the hallway. I got up all the way to the door, still staring at it, before I realized something was in the side of my view. I slowly turned my head toward the living room. The man was standing there in the middle of the room with his back facing me, holding the shovel. He was motionless, like he didn't know I was there, or didn't care. It was almost pitch black in that room, too, so he was just standing in the pitch dark, not moving at all. I ran back upstairs, locked myself in, and dialed 911, but the house still remained eerily silent. An officer arrived 5-ish minutes later. He found the back door open and no one else in the house with me. I explained everything, and the officer filed my report, but there was no real investigation. I don't really know why, as it was clear this man had broken in, and I had a fairly good description of him, but that was where it was all left at. I don't know what was wrong with that man, why he was doing what he was doing, or what he wanted from me. I think from the way he looked and the creepy nature of him showing up in the middle of the night every night, it was only a matter of time before things escalated even further. I had a couple friends back home mention he could have been sleepwalking because of the way I described his almost lifeless way of moving, and how repetitive and consistent everything happened every single night at the same time. But I still think this is a stretch. Either way, if that was the case, it's still incredibly creepy and would have been very dangerous. If I said anything or woke him up or tried to stop him, it could have triggered violent behavior. But none of this explains how he somehow knew every time I left the window and went downstairs. Whatever was really going on, I'll never know, because I moved away a few months later.